is Elizabeth Griffin, the Black Romance Writer, and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to read an excerpt from the book Black Voices. It's an anthology of Black writers and poets. Today we are going to discuss Ann Petrie. She is an author of the book entitled The Street, which I truly love, and I recommend that you also check it out. Her book made Oprah's list of books, so it is definitely a winner. Today's short story is entitled In Darkness and Confusion. William Jones took a sip of coffee and then put his cup down on the kitchen table. It didn't taste right, and he was annoyed because he always looked forward to eating breakfast. He usually got out of bed as soon as he woke up and hurried into the kitchen. Then he would take a long time heating the cornbread left over from dinner the night before, letting the coffee brew until it was strong and clear, frying bacon and scrambling eggs. He would eat very slowly, savoring the early morning quiet and the just rightness of the food he'd fixed. There was no question about early morning being the best part of the day, he thought. But this Saturday morning in July, it was too hot in the apartment. There were too many nagging worries that kept drifting through his mind. In the heat, he couldn't think clearly, so that all of them, pressed in against him, weighed him down. He pushed his plate away from him. The eggs had cooked too long. Much as he liked cornbread, it tasted like sand this morning, grainy and coarse inside his throat. He couldn't help wondering if it scratched the insides of his stomach in the same way. Pink was moving around in the bedroom. He cocked his head to one side, listening to her. He could tell exactly what she was doing, as though he were in there with her. The soft, heavy sound of her stockinged feet as she walked over to the dresser. The dresser drawer being pulled out. That meant she was getting a clean slip. Then the thud of her heavy 200 pounds landing in the rocker by the window. She was sitting down to comb her hair, untwisting the small, tiny braids she'd made the night before. She would unwind them one by one, putting the pins in her mouth as she went along. Now, she was brushing her hair, for he could hear the creak of the rocker. She was rocking back and forth, humming under her breath as she brushed. He decided that as soon as she came into the kitchen, he would go back into the bedroom, get dressed, and go to work. For his mind was already on the mailbox. He didn't feel like talking to Pink. There simply had to be a letter from Sam today. There had to be. He was thinking about it so hard that he didn't hear Pink walk into the kitchen. When he looked up, she was standing in the doorway. She was a short, enormously fat woman. The only garment she wore was a bright pink slip that magnified the size of her body. The skin on her arms and shoulders and chest was startlingly black against the pink material. In spite of the brisk brushing she had given her hair, it stood up stiffly all over her head in short, wiry lengths, as though she wore a turban of some rough, dark gray material. He got up from the table quickly when he saw her. "Hot, ain't it?" he said, and patted her arm as he went past her toward the bedroom. She looked at the food on his plate. "You didn't want no breakfast?" she asked. "Too hot," he said over his shoulders. He closed the bedroom door behind him gently. If she saw the door was shut, she'd know that he was kind of low in his mind this morning and that he didn't feel like talking. I am sure that you have enjoyed this excerpt from In Darkness and Confusion by Ann Petrie. It is a short story that you can find in the anthology Black Voices, which has a rich and varied body of literature that has been created by Black Americans, which has become an organic part of the literature of the United States. The short story by Ann Petrie, In Darkness and Confusion, was inspired by a race riot that took place in Harlem City on August the 1st and August the 2nd of 1943, after a white police officer, James Collins, shot and wounded Robert Bandy, an African-American soldier, and rumors circulated that the soldier had been killed. The riot was chiefly directed by Black residents against white-owned property in Harlem. It was one of 5 riots in the nation that year related to Black and white tensions during World War II. Other riots took place in Detroit, Beaumont, Texas, Mobile, Alabama, and Los Angeles. As a result of reading this short story, In Darkness and Confusion, I went to my local library in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and I discovered that Ann Petrie had written another book entitled The Street. And so I eagerly took this book out, and let me tell you, I truly enjoyed the story. It was definitely upsetting at times, depressing at times, but I loved the storytelling, and I loved reading about the character Lottie, which is the main character, and her trials and tribulations in Harlem, New York. So, for those of you who may not know anything at all about Ann Petrie, let me just mention this. She was an American writer of novels, short stories, children's books, and journalism. Her 1946 debut novel, The Street, became the first novel by an African-American woman to sell more than 1 million copies. Yes, yes, yes. She definitely deserved the recognition for her novel, for her writing, and for her talent. Whenever I come across a writer that truly inspires me, I want to immediately find out how they began writing, what inspired them to write, how long they've been writing, and what is their educational background. And for a long time, I was preoccupied with a writer's educational background because I assumed that unless you went to college, unless you majored in writing and English, you could not become a writer. There were certain steps I believed you needed to take in order to become an accomplished writer. I now, however, realize that yes, creative writing courses are definitely helpful. Going to school and learning about English is definitely helpful. But I also believe that if you have a desire and a will to write, then you can teach yourself writing through research, through practice, through reading. There is no reason why, if you have a story in you to tell, that you can't do it. And education does not limit you from achieving that goal. In thinking about the riots of 1943 in Harlem, New York, and the current riots that have been sweeping our country in the past couple of years, I'm wondering if there are any writers out there who have written short stories or essays on the subject of the current riots and the problems that the Black community has had with the policing force. Are you inspired to write short stories that deal with the social issues of today? Have you written poems or short stories or novels about the things that you see happening in today, whether it's politics, whether it is the Flint, Michigan water crisis, whether it is the state of education in the inner cities? These are definitely topics that you as a writer can address.